I'm a single mother, not the kind of strong mother you see in movies. I'm the kind of mom who stays up all night when her child has a fever, skips meals because there's not enough money, and braces herself every time her son Ethan is looked at with those strange, judgmental eyes. Ethan is 9 years old, a boy with bright eyes, a cheerful smile, and a child with autism. We moved into this neighborhood after years of cramming ourselves into a tiny apartment. I thought I had finally found a peaceful place to raise my son, until I met Karen. She's the president of the HOA here, always wearing a polo shirt, carrying a clipboard, and scanning everything with eyes like a security camera. On the third day after we moved in, I received my first warning notice. Your child's shouting is disturbing the neighborhood's peace. I was speechless. That wasn't the scream of a misbehaving child. It was the sound of a boy struggling to cope with the world. I knocked on Karen's door to explain. She looked me up and down and coldly said, "I don't care what condition your child has. This community has standards." I didn't say anything that day, but something inside me had already awakened. If she picked the wrong person to mess with, she would soon regret it. This neighborhood is quiet. The grass is cut to the same length. The mailboxes are all the same shade of gray. Each morning, people walk their dogs. No one raises their voice. No one is different. Ethan is different. My son loves glass marbles. Every morning, he wakes up and touches them, lines them up by color. But even a small change, like one marble going missing, can send him into panic. One morning, Ethan screamed. Then he started slapping his ears, as if trying to silence something echoing in his mind. I knelt down and hugged him, like I always do. Outside, Karen stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, glaring through the window. That afternoon, I received the second warning letter. This time, it included a quoted regulation. Section 14.3, noise from personal property shall not exceed limits that disturb other residents. My hands trembled. This wasn't loud music. This wasn't a party. This was a child living, breathing, trying to survive. I wrote a letter by hand. I explained my son's condition. I emphasized that Ethan is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Karen never replied. Instead, she left a handwritten note at my door. If you can't control your child, perhaps you should find somewhere else to live. And I knew then, this was no longer just about me. It was a Wednesday. So hot it felt suffocating. I got off work late, and as I stepped out of the car, I saw Ethan curled up next to the bushes in front of our house. He was clutching his worn-out teddy bear, his face smudged with dirt, eyes red and swollen. I ran to him, panicking. "What happened? Who did this to you?" Ethan didn't answer. He just whispered 3 breathless words. "She yelled. Loud." My neighbor Tina had seen it all. At around 3 p.m., when I hadn't come home yet, Ethan had a sensory overload. It happens often after school. He bangs his hands on the carpet, screams for a few minutes, then calms himself down. But today, Karen had had enough. She crossed the fence, pushed open the back door, which was only slightly ajar, and barged into my house like it was her own. She screamed at my son, her voice cold, shrill, deafening. "Shut up! No one wants to hear you. You're ruining the peace of this neighborhood." Ethan stood frozen, then flinched and fell backward, hitting his head on the edge of the table. But she didn't stop. Karen snatched his teddy bear, threw it to the floor, and stomped on it right in front of him. "This thing makes you worse. Kids like you don't belong here." Ethan ran, out of the house, into the bushes. Alone. No one helped my child. Not a single person. That night, Ethan didn't say a word. He placed his teddy bear in the corner of the room and never touched it again. I held him all night, listening to his ragged breathing, choking back my own sobs. Karen didn't just cross the fence into my yard. She crossed the last line a mother can bear. And in that moment, I swore to myself, I will never let my son be treated like that again. And Karen will never abuse her power for one more second. The night Karen stomped on Ethan's teddy bear, I couldn't sleep. I watched my son curl up on his bed, the bear lying in a far corner like a forbidden object. He once whispered to me, "Bear is my protector." And now, his protector had been crushed under the foot of an adult. And I realized, if I kept backing down, she would never stop. The next morning, I began documenting everything. Every warning letter. Every note Karen left. Every time Ethan had a meltdown after seeing her. I installed cameras at our front door and in the living room, not to monitor my child, but to protect him from those who don't understand. Then I reached out to a legal organization that supports people with disabilities, where I met Lisa, a lawyer with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see through all facades. After reading the file, Lisa said only one thing: "You don't have to apologize anymore. The ADA stands with you and your son." 3 days later, the HOA received a formal letter demanding all fines be dropped, along with a warning that any further discriminatory behavior would be taken to federal court. I sent a copy to Karen, too, with a short note attached. "I've been silent long enough. Now the law will speak." Karen didn't respond to the lawyer's letter, but she retaliated in the way she knew best. The next violation notice arrived, this time with bold red letters: "Community disruption, continued disturbance to neighbors." This time, I didn't respond with words. I responded with security footage, with an attorney's email, and with a letter to all residents. In it, I told the whole story, from my son's scream to her eyes as she stomped on the last toy Ethan trusted. I didn't ask for pity. I said only one thing: I don't need your sympathy. I just need you to listen. The emergency HOA meeting was held on Saturday. For the first time since we moved in, I walked into that room not as the accused, but as a mother. Karen sat at the center of the room, her face no longer confident. When I played the video the moment she screamed in my son's face, my voice remained calm, but the room fell silent. An elderly woman began to cry. A man stood up and said, "My grandson has autism. If anyone did that to him, I'd take them to court too." And then, one by one, they turned their backs on Karen. That day, for the first time, I saw her eyes falter. Not because of me, not because of the lawsuit, but because Karen had lost the only thing she was ever clinging to, a power she never truly deserved. Karen was ordered to appear before a federal board for harassment of a disabled individual and violating the ADA. I sat there, holding Ethan's hand, as the judge looked directly at her and said in a calm, firm voice, "You entered a woman's home without permission. You screamed in the face of an autistic child. And you believe you did that to preserve peace?" Karen stood there, wearing an expensive suit, but not a trace of authority remained. Her lawyer tried to justify her actions. She was simply enforcing community standards. But the judge cut him off, without hesitation. What kind of standard allows someone to trample the rights of a disabled child? The ruling was clear. Karen was permanently removed from her position as HOA president, fined $7,500, required to issue a public written apology, and sentenced to 120 hours of community service at a special needs children's center. As we left the courtroom, I looked at Karen one last time. She didn't shout. She didn't insult me. She didn't meet my eyes. She just bowed her head. And Ethan, the boy she once called a disturbance, stood beside me and smiled, ever so gently. No revenge was needed. No shouting. Only justice spoken at the right time. And this time, justice spoke for us. A week after the trial, neighbors started showing up at my door with homemade pies. One man left a handwritten note: "I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner. You taught us courage." That afternoon, Ethan sat on the porch. The air was still. In his hands was the same old teddy bear, the one Karen had once stomped on. But this time, he held it close to his chest, tightly, and smiled. No yelling, no knocking, no violation notices. Just sunlight, birdsong, and a little bit of peace, the kind we had fought so hard to reclaim. Karen once believed she was the law. But the real law is what protects the vulnerable from those who abuse power. If you ever see a Karen in your neighborhood, don't stay silent, because sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up, and that's enough to change an entire community.